In a small village nestled deep within lush green valleys, where mist often clung to the ancient pine trees like soft silk ribbons, there stood a small wooden house, always fragrant with the scent of pine resin and sandalwood. It was the sanctuary of an old carpenter, a man with calloused hands, but gestures so gentle, as if he never wished to hurt any wood grain he touched. Every morning, before the sun could peek over the mountain peaks, he began his work in absolute silence. The rhythmic sound of the wood plane and the steady tapping of the chisel created a unique melody of perseverance and reverence for time. However, in stark contrast to this diligence, his only son lived like a sleepwalker in broad daylight. To him, time was something obvious and infinite, like the air he breathed or the stream flowing behind their house. He would spend long days just sitting by the riverbank, watching fallen petals drift away, or lying under the shade of a tree to count the clouds changing shape in the sky. He always believed that life was an inexhaustible treasure, and tomorrow was always a certain promise to postpone everything of today. The father watched his son with eyes filled with tolerance, mixed with silent concern. He understood that dry lectures would only be like wind blowing through the leaves, unable to linger in a sleeping heart. One morning, as the chilly air signaled an approaching rain, the father called his son and placed an old pocket watch into his palm. Its silver casing had tarnished over the years, the glass slightly blurred, but the ticking inside resonated steadily and persistently like the heartbeat of a tireless traveler. He told him to take this heirloom to the busiest market at the foot of the mountain and ask everyone he met how much they were willing to pay for it, but strictly forbade him from selling it, no matter how high the price offered. The son took the keepsake with an indifferent face and wandered off as dark clouds began to gather from the horizon, obscuring the faint early morning sunlight. The market appeared before his eyes with all the clutter and bustle of the material world. The sound of people haggling, the noise of horse carriages rolling on stone roads, and the heavy smell of food filled the air. He began to ask for the price of the watch. A cloth merchant glanced at it and pouted, saying the casing was too old, worth only a few copper coins. A jeweler scrutinized it through a magnifying glass and shook his head, saying the internal machinery was obsolete and he could only buy it for a few spare parts at the price of a meager meal. Each refusal, each indifferent shake of the head from the crowd, made him feel a rising sense of shame. He realized that in the eyes of this world, his father's precious heritage was nothing more than a piece of scrap. As his self-esteem began to crumble, the sky suddenly turned dark. A thunderous roar tore through the space, and then the rain poured down. The mountain rain was unannounced, powerful and fierce, as if it wanted to wash away all the noise of the market. People scrambled for shelter, and stalls were hurriedly packed in chaos. The son stood still amidst the freezing water, clutching the old watch. He hurried into a small, quiet alley where narrow eaves blocked the light. At the end of that alley was a small shop with a decayed wooden sign that simply read, "The Time Shop." Stepping inside, the cold of the rain was immediately repelled by the scent of agar wood and the warmth of a small oil lamp. The space was strangely silent, with only the ticking of hundreds of clocks hanging on the walls beating in unison. Behind the wooden counter, an old man with silvery hair and eyes as deep as a starry sky was meticulously cleaning a tiny gear. The son approached, placed his father's watch on the table, and asked in a voice trembling from the cold if the old man knew the price of the time inside this watch. The old man paused. He did not look at the tarnished silver casing or the blurred glass. He placed his ear near the watch and listened for a long moment. A gentle smile appeared on his lips as he looked into the young man's eyes. The old man spoke in a voice as deep and resonant as a distant temple bell, saying that this watch might only be worth a few coins if viewed as an object. But the time it has marked is something no treasure in this world can buy. You can buy 10,000 other, more luxurious watches, But no amount of gold or silver can buy back a single moment you sat with your father, or an afternoon you let your life drift away in aimlessness. Each tick is not the sound of a machine, but the footsteps of your life walking toward the sunset. People often only realize the value of water when the well is dry, and only realize the value of time when it has become the past. The rain outside is falling. Each drop that touches the ground is a moment gone forever. You cannot keep the raindrop, but you can choose how to embrace it. The old man's words were like a lightning bolt cleaving through the darkened soul of the sun. He looked out the window and saw the rain falling on the wildflowers by the road. Before, he only saw rain as an annoyance, but now he saw in each drop a life, a rhythm, and a proud finitude. He realized how many raindrops of his life he had wasted on meaningless things. A clean fear crept into his heart, not the fear of death, but the fear of not having truly lived. He bowed to the old man, took back the watch, and stepped out of the shop as the rain began to subside. The ground now smelled strongly of damp earth. The leaves were greener after their bath, and the air became strangely crystal clear. He did not wander as he did in the morning. He started to run. He ran through the still-soaked streets, through fields steaming with moisture under the post-rain sun, his heart beating wildly to the ticking rhythm in his pocket. He ran because he knew that every step now had meaning. Every breath now was a gift. When he arrived home, he saw his father still sitting there on the wooden porch, fingering a piece of fragrant pine wood. The father asked nothing. He only saw the bright fire in his son's eyes and the labored breath of a man who had just found himself. Since that day, the wooden house no longer witnessed a young man lying around waiting for time to pass. Instead, it was the image of two men, one old and one young, working together in absolute harmony. The son learned to listen to the voice of the wood, learned to make precise strokes with the plane, because he knew that every minute he spent on work was a piece of his life's flesh and blood invested there. He no longer spoke of tomorrow. He only knew now. The silence in his soul was no longer emptiness, but a fullness of gratitude. The old watch was now placed solemnly on the wooden shelf in the center of the house, not to remind them of the hour, but to remind them that the flow of time is the flow of love and presence. Life does not become meaningful because we have a lot of time, but because we have lived deeply in every moment we are granted. Under the eaves of the house, after every rain, the sun rises again, and the ticking still sounds steadily, like a gentle reminder of the peace of hearts that know how to cherish the present. Each passing day is not a day lost, but a day crystallized into shimmering memories like the dewdrops lingering on leaves after a long, healing rain.